Hey everyone, listen, I've got to be honest with you. I have a problem with my rear end. Specifically, the rear end of my 2012 Nissan Xterra. I mean, just look at this thing. You see that there? That is a Wilco Offroad spare tire carrier. It's mounted to the factory 2-inch hitch receiver, and that is causing me some serious problems when it comes to my departure angle.
Yeah.
But we're going to do something about the situation. And for the answer, I'm turning to Canada. This is the second-gen Nissan Xterra rear bumper kit from Coastal Offroad. It's a weld-it-yourself bumper kit, and if you've ever dealt with one of these, you know they can feel like a steel jigsaw puzzle. But Coastal has updated this one. The main shell now arrives mostly formed. It used to come as 3 flat sheets of steel, but not anymore. You still get a box of assorted parts, of course, and these classic Xeroxed instructions. I wish I'd paid closer attention to those. More on that later. We're gonna start by taking off the Wilco tire swing, right? So that has to come off the factory hitch mount first. Let me show you here.
All right, so the way this works is there's a hitch pin right there, of course, securing the carrier, but in there is a bolt that keeps this whole thing from rattling and shaking.
Let me show you how it works. It kind of expands in here. It expands the fastener and keeps it really snug in the 2-inch receiver hitch. Now this part goes quickly. Once the spare tire's off, the carrier isn't terribly heavy, just awkward to wrangle solo. All right, so that was part 1 of the process. Now we remove the factory tow hitch here. So this is a 19, that is a 17. Now this part is very straightforward, but I had to move carefully when it came to the wiring because I do plan on reusing the factory tow package. Okay, at the finish line here is the trailer lights, right? Here's the harness, license plate lights, and these are the last remaining 2 bolts that hold on this factory bumper, this thin sheet of metal here. That is what's coming off. That's what's getting replaced. The factory bumper is thin, but it's not necessarily light. Can it be done solo? Yes. Should it be done solo? Probably not. I ended up using a jack stand to support the bumper while I removed the final bolts because I am brave, but I am not stupid, at least not consistently. All right, bumper's off. That was the easy part, I think. Now to part 2. Now, a project like this requires serious welding. So I brought this project to my friend Roman Marquez. He's a talented fabricator who runs an outfit in West El Paso called Roman Strength.
So I started back in 2010 when CrossFit started. I started building sleds. My wife bought me a welder to do some stuff around the house. I loved it. I love being creative and designing, and so that kind of gave me a hobby that turned into a business, and essentially. Looks like this is 3/16 plate. It's already, the mill scale has already taken off, so it looks like it's going to be much easier and less work to powder coat. Initially you had mentioned that you thought this kit had come in pieces, which would be somewhat more difficult just to keep everything aligned and tacked together. You'd have a lot more grinding to do, a ton more welding, but now that they used a press to bend this, you've got this nice radius. This is perfect.
The process starts with these 2 big bumper brackets bolted straight onto the frame. Now, this tells the bumper exactly where it's going to live. On one side, you have to use washers on the inside of the bracket to create a little extra breathing room. Not both sides, just one.
That gives the finished bumper room to move in case the steel shifts during welding.
I think we need to push this that way.
Once the brackets are bolted onto the frame, the main shell slides over them through the recovery points. And for the first time, this starts looking like an actual bumper.
Man, I could go out. All right, so I think I'm gonna go ahead and push this on. The gaps are good on both sides, Robert. I'm gonna tack that. I'm probably just gonna tack here, so I don't have to hold it in.
Yeah.
And then go on the back side and do some tacks.
Once the tack welds are in, the bumper has its basic shape, not fully welded, but held exactly where it needs to be. Roman pulls it back off the truck and moves the whole thing into the shop.
See, tacked kind of all around. Same thing on the top. And then I just did a puddle weld in those little slots. That's a pretty clean weld with a MIG. It's got a little bit of residue. You can take that off with a grinder, but for the most part, that's kind of what you're looking for.
Up next, Roman sandwiched 3 pieces of steel to create the recovery points.
So the thicker the metal, the hotter you want it to get. And so when you talk about a penetrating weld, you want that weld to basically penetrate and grab the metal.
With the main brackets welded in, the next piece is this 2x2 steel support bar. It ties everything together, adds rigidity across the whole bumper, but because no 2 old trucks are the same, the bar has to be trimmed to fit this Xterra specifically.
Here we go, perfect.
Before the support bar goes in, Roman welds the 2-inch receiver hitch to the bumper. This is the whole point of the project, to get that hitch up higher. The receiver gets welded flush inside the bumper, then reinforced with an additional plate. And yes, this is exactly where I should have stared at the instructions a little longer. We'll get there. After that, Roman welds in these brackets for the pod lights. I really like this detail. The lights don't hang off the back like an afterthought. Then the big support bar goes in, tying the whole thing together.
I'm gonna just clean up a little bit of the splatter. There's not much, but this is just me being what I am here.
3 hours. That's what it took Roman to turn a pile of raw steel into a complete rear bumper. Recovery points, a tucked receiver, protected light mounts, real welds. Now I just have to make it look less like a farm implement and more like something that belongs on the back of my Xterra. Time to head to my professional paint booth, otherwise known as my backyard. First step was this primer paint. 2 cans, front and back. My respirator was missing, so I briefly convinced myself that a bandana and a light breeze were OSHA approved. They are not. Wear a real respirator. By the second coat, I was having an in-depth conversation with my cat. Now, once the paint dried, I gave the outside a light sanding, knocked down the rough spots, wiped it clean, and got ready for the fun part. This is a $50 can of Raptor liner. Could I have sent the bumper out for powder coat? Yes. Would it have been cleaner, more professional, probably smarter? Also, yes. But I wanted something rugged, textured, and very much in the spirit of this build. So Raptor liner it is.
All right, so moment of truth has arrived and we're going to install this bumper in a little bit here, but before we get it on the truck, we'll take advantage of having it off and I'm going to go ahead and install some lights that go right here. Now you can buy lights from Coastal Offroad, they'll sell you a kit. I'm going to repurpose these Harbor Freight cubes that I have. Really simple 3-inch pods. So you see that tab right there, that is where you would mount, that's where you would mount your light, right on that tab. So standard stuff, and then that way, once it's there, you can actually kind of point it and adjust the beam. I'm going to try to hook these up to my reverse lights.
I haven't figured out how to do that yet. That's maybe tomorrow guy's problem, but this is where they're going to live. Okay, it's time to bolt this thing onto the Xterra and find out if this plan actually worked. This part is absolutely a two-man job, or two-person job. Luckily, my sister happened to be walking her dogs nearby, so I borrowed her Brawn for a few minutes. And as you can see, the bumper went on clean. Things were looking up. And then because this is still an Xterra project, I immediately created a new problem. Check out this Craftsman tap and die kit. Pretty cool, right? You know what that means. It means I got impatient and used power tools on the frame bolts and cross-threaded this bolt right here. Luckily, after a few minutes with the tap, I cleaned up the threads and solved the problem. All's well that ends well, right? Wrong, because then it was time to install the Wilco.
I blew it. All right, we're gonna have to remove the bumper again. Let me show you what's going on.
When I say we're gonna remove the bumper, I'm gonna remove the bumper because you see this hole? That hole is supposed to be over there. But I mistakenly told Roman that the hole went here. I just glanced at the instructions. I just got it wrong, okay? I just got it wrong. I blew it!
And you blew it! You blew it!
So the bumper came back off, and I started to make a new hole where the last hole should have been. So I measured twice and started with pilot holes. Eventually, I had to bring in Big Bertha, this vintage Makita drill that looks like it came out of a Soviet submarine. And if this footage looks like a dream sequence, it's not. That's cutting oil on the lens. By this point, I was getting delirious. Now, the Makita worked great until I decided to break the bit. Luckily, I had a second step bit. Eventually, I got through the receiver and made a proper hole for the hitch pin, exactly where it needed to be. Okay, so the Wilco Offroad spare tire carrier is officially mounted onto the Coastal Offroad bumper here. And first things first, obviously mission accomplished when it comes to clearance, right? I mean, this thing is now sitting so much higher up off the ground. I mean, we're now at about 26 inches when it comes to the departure angle, and it's tucked so much closer now. And now this design here is actually going to work to your benefit if you're coming off the ledge. But all that being said, this is now the point that I'm beginning to regret not having spent the additional $600 for the swing out arm that comes from Coastal Offroad. In that case, you would have welded it onto the bumper itself. The reason for that, several things really. Well, the license plate holder on the Wilco is covering one of the lights, right? Another thing here is this thing is designed to put your spare tire dead center. Obviously, now with it sitting higher, that's really eliminating your visibility out of the back window. If you notice the Coastal Offroad swing arm, the tire ends up sort of pitched to one side, giving you a better view out the back window. Yeah, I mean, I think this is still a fine product, but I think obviously buy once, cry once comes to mind here. I could have sold this locally, and I should have gotten the swing out. And so all that presents an interesting opportunity. What if I run the truck without the hitch mount? I mean, this is a good-looking bumper, and it deserves a solo spotlight, even if it's temporary. Simple design, serious strength, recovery points are clean, receiver is tucked, lights are protected, and the Raptor liner gives the whole thing this uniform special edition look. It doesn't look like an aftermarket bumper to me, it looks like it belongs there. And the truck drives differently without the spare hanging off the back. The rear leaf springs sit about half an inch higher, the whole thing just feels lighter, less overland backpack, more trail truck. But the original problem was the Wilco. So it's time to put it back on and find out if I actually solved what I set out to solve. Back in the desert, I aimed the Xterra at the washouts and arroyos that used to make me nervous. The spots where the old setup would drag the hitch, bump the carrier, or slowly murder my license plate. Okay, so another example here of a transition into a very steep climb. Again, an opportunity for the rear end in the past to have hit. The camera never does a good job of showing how steep some of these angles are, but trust me, these are exactly the places where my rear end used to bottom out. The truck's rear end. And now, nothing. No scrape, no clang, no license plate sacrifice, no steel diaper dragging through the desert. Zero issues, zero problems. Okay, time to find some rocks, because the stakes get much higher when rocks are in the way. As you can see, the departure angle is vastly improved. That part is obvious. What's less obvious, until you're actually out here, is what this truck does when you point it at something it probably shouldn't climb. It just goes. No drama, no hesitation. Now, I've spent a lot of time and a fair amount of money on this Xterra, and sometimes you get to the end of a build and wonder if it was worth it. This is not one of those times. So here's where I've landed. The Wilco gives me flexibility. Longer trip, remote destination, run the full-size spare on the carrier. Staying local, want the cleanest possible departure angle, pull the carrier off, and run the bumper alone. That's the best version of this setup. Not one permanent answer, two good options. A few quick field notes here. The Coastal Offroad bumper is significantly stronger and thicker than the factory bumper, but doesn't actually add much weight. At about 60 pounds, it's roughly in line with the factory bumper and hitch setup that it replaces. The real weight comes from the Wilco at about 70 pounds, and then another 70 pounds for the spare tire. And finally, a few weeks after I paid for the bumper and shipping, I got a surprise FedEx bill for $33 in import charges. Ah yes, tariffs. Apparently that's just where we are now. Might be different by the time you watch this.
But that's life, right? Life is uncertain. There is no certainty in life except death and taxes. So, in the meantime, I hope you enjoy the drive, and thanks for watching, everyone.